Hello guys, and welcome back to the Godot Beginners Tutorial Series. We're going to continue kind of where we left off last time with our tutorial project. So if you haven't seen the first video, please go back and check that out. Put the link in the description. But yeah, basically we're going to continue with our tutorial project here. And last time we created a basic main menu scene with just a basic background and some text at the top. And then we were able to run this project, and we were also able to resize the screen so we could run it at any resolution on any device. And we also exported this project so that it could be played on itch.io in the browser or shared with your friends. Yeah, so now that we understand how to set up a project and export it, the next thing I kind of want to do is help you to build kind of a document for tracking, what exactly you want to accomplish with your projects. It's really important, especially for game development, to have something to understand, like, what is the goal of your project? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the project scope? What are all the features that need to be implemented? That way you're not kind of just running around, spinning your wheels, like adding random stuff. Sometimes that's good, but a lot of times you want to kind of have a plan laid out for like what you want to do, why you want to add certain things, and that'll kind of help you figure out, okay, what do I actually need to do to make this game? So most of the time that's called like a game design document. And so basically we just want to have a plan for what is this game going to be, what do we need to add to it. And I kind of decided for this first game, we are going to make a game basically called Pong, which is probably one of the simpler games that we could make, and I think this is going to really help you understand how difficult it is, or what all goes into making like even just a very simple game. And the more simple games that you make, you'll have a better understanding of like what is required to make a really complex project. Like if your dream goal is to make like a MMO or a multiplayer FPS shooter or something like that, first you kind of need to know, okay, how do I make like the simplest game possible, and then how does that kind of scale up, right? So for this first game, we're going to be making Pong, and I have this website pulled up here. It's called 20 Games Challenge. You can Google this. It's a very good resource for those getting started with game development. It has a bunch of really simple games that you can make. And since they're games that already kind of exist, like everybody kind of knows about Pong, Flappy Bird, Frogger, that means you already know like what the game is going to be, and so you kind of already know like what things you need to add to it. If you're making your own game from scratch, it can actually be quite challenging to figure out, okay, what do I actually need to add to this game? What is it going to be? That's a whole different set of skills, the game design, from actually implementing stuff. So for now, I just want to focus on having a concept where you kind of already know what it is and you just need to create it, right? And then the kind of making your own projects and designing your own games, that's kind of something that I think can kind of be done in parallel or independently from this. So yeah, our first game is going to be Pong. This is basically going to be our game design document here. It explains what the game is, what are the goals or things that you need to add to the game to actually make the game. For example, Pong, you need to have a play arena with 2 walls and a divider in the middle. You need to have a paddle for each player. You need to have player inputs to move the paddle up and down. So just all the basic stuff of what things need to be able to happen in the game. And then you also have stretch goals. This is a really good thing to have in your projects where you kind of have the basic goals of these things have to be in the game. And then you have these extra things where, well, this doesn't have to be in the game to play it, but it would be nice to have, right? So having an AI that you can play against rather than having to have two players, that would be nice, but maybe not required. Having a main menu, having sounds. So it's good to have stretch goals for your project, but try to condense the most important things kind of into like the main goals. So yeah, we're gonna be making Pong, and I've actually done this project before. This was one of the first projects that I did when I kind of started getting back into game development. So I think this is a really good first project to do. So yeah, this is going to be our game design document. I'm going to kind of pull this off to the side so you won't really be able to see it, but maybe just kind of keep this open in another tab if you're following along, and yeah, go from there. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the info from that, and I'm going to create a new file. I'll go into Res, open File Manager. I'm going to create a new folder here called Docs or underscore Docs. Create a new file, text document, call this Design Doc. So this is kind of how I like to start off a lot of my projects. This program is called Notepad++. It's basically the same as Notepad, so you can also just use the Windows Notepad, but I like Notepad++ because I can change the language settings to properties, and then I have some built-in text highlighting and things like that. So we'll call this Pong Design Document. You could also just do like a Word doc or something like that. Doesn't really matter. And we're just going to copy in the project goals from that. Yeah. So we'll kind of use that as a reference going forward. And I'm actually going to change these around a bit. Since we already have a main menu, I'm actually going to use this as one of our first goals. And then we'll create the arena after that. So, alrighty. So as you can see, we have our goals laid out. And the first one is to create a menu where we can kind of start and reset the game. So we're going to do that. So the first very simple way to do this is going to be with our input mapping. So if you go to Project Settings, go to Input Map. Something very common that you'll want to be able to do, especially when you're like debugging your game, is to be able to quit and like restart it very easily. So a lot of times what I like to do is add a restart action. So call it restart. Hit add. I'll turn this off again. This is just built-in actions, so it has some already built-in stuff mapped out for us, but we're just going to create our own here. So go down to add event, hit the letter R on your keyboard and hit OK. And what that does is it creates an input event for us in Godot called restart, and that input event is mapped to pressing the R key. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like here in a second, and I'll add one called quit, and I'll make that the escape key. Okay. Now we've done that, we're going to create our first ever script in Godot. If you right-click the main node, go to attach script. It's going to create a new file called main.gd. And this is a GDScript file. We'll show what that looks like here in a second. Hit create. So this is basically the main programming language in Godot. If you're not familiar with programming, I don't know if I want to go too in depth on it here. Maybe I can link some other tutorials in the description, but this is basically the language of your game development, of how you tell the game to do what you want it to do. You'll see at the top it says extends node 2D. That just means that this script is attached to a node 2D, basically, which is what our main scene is. If you remember, we created a 2D scene at the beginning. It's just called a node 2D. So this is a script on our node 2D. And normally this would auto-populate. I think they changed something in the latest version, but I'm going to have to type out a few things here. So this process function, you'll see a lot. This is basically a function that runs pretty much every frame of your game. So if you have something that needs to check for stuff like all the time, you can use this. But actually, I'm going to go ahead and use the input function instead. This input function will basically fire anytime you have an input event. So it's not running every frame, it's just running whenever there's like a keyboard or a mouse input, something like that. So in the input function, I'm going to check our input. And you could do, there's different ways of doing this, but I'm just going to do action release. Quit, and I'll do an if statement here, print quit, and I'll explain kind of what this is doing here in a second. I think I have to do action just released. There we go. And then restart. Okay. Yeah, so I'll make sure this works real quick, and then I'll try to explain that. There we go. Okay. Yeah, this is, get rid of that. Okay, so what is going on here? Basically, I wrote this input function, and we'll ignore this other one for a second. So like I was saying, the input function, this is a script that will run anytime you press like a keyboard key or a mouse button. It will detect that, and it will you can see what that is. So actually I could just do print event. Now if we hit run, I could do, yeah, so if you see down here in the output, I'm moving my mouse around, and you can see it's printing out input event mouse motion, which is the type of input event that it's detecting. If I click my left mouse button, you'll see it has button index. It's kind of hard to see since we're printing out every event, but I could start typing letters here too. So right now I'm pressing Q on my keyboard, so you can see it says key code equals 81 parentheses Q, and then W E R T, so you can see it's printing out whatever button I'm clicking there. So yeah, that's just reading whatever inputs the user might be making and printing them out for me. Now this line of code here, this is using the input mapping that we created, where I said quit, which is the escape key. So if I press that quit button or escape, it should print out quit in the debugger. So we can check that here. If I hit escape, you can see down here it says quit. And then the other code there was for restart, which I said was R. So if I press R, it'll print restart. Good. So this is a very common method of having an if statement, which says if something happens, then do this. So if we press the quit key, then print quit. Now we don't actually want to print quit. We want the game to exit. So I actually forget. I think it's system. Yeah, I forget how to do that. So we're gonna take a quick look on the docs. I wonder if this will. No, that's not gonna work. I gotta go to docs. All right. So first, look at the Godot documentation. Maybe I would recommend maybe bookmarking this page. This is probably one of the easiest ways to figure out how to do anything. So we want to quit the game. So I'm going to search quit. Handling quit requests. And there we go, get tree.quit. Once you understand programming a bit more, it'll probably be easier to kind of read the documentation. But basically, I just searched for quitting in here, and then I found the page related to quitting. And I see that this getTree.quit is probably the function that I want to use. So I just copied that, go back here, getTree.quit, and we'll see if that works. So I hit escape, and it quits. Perfect. And then restarting, I believe this is reload current scene. So I already knew that one, so I just typed it in. And we'll see if that works. So if I hit R, it's hard to tell if it's actually restarting because I have the same window, but it looks like that's working. All right. So we now have a game that can quit and restart. So we go back to our document, and I'm going to say add button to go to game scene. And then I'm going to comment this line out because we completed that. All right. So now we want to add a play button. So I'm going to go to our control and add a child node button. And call this play. And then we'll set the anchor, if you remember, like we did for the label. And I'll put it in the center. And I'm going to make this a little bigger so it's easier to press. And again, I'm going to go to the theme override font size and make that a little bigger. Good. I'm going to call this play_btn. And I'm going to rename this to title. Hit play. And now you see we have this play button. And the default behavior in Godot for buttons is pretty nice. So if I mouse over the button, it will change to a highlighted color. And it'll turn back if I go out. And if I press, there's also a pressed thing. And it also has a focus mode for when the button's selected. I usually turn that off, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Go to focus, mode off, or none, I guess, and then hit play. And now it just gets rid of that white border that was there. So then we now have a button that we can click. Now, if we want this button to do anything, first thing we need to know is whether that button has been clicked, right? So the default behavior is button release action mode. So if we go to the inspector on the right, you'll see this action mode basically says when is the button clicked. So sometimes you might want it to be clicked when you, like right when you press the button, and sometimes you want it to be clicked when you release the button. So button press would be if I just click down with my left mouse, it would instantly click the button, whereas button release would be I'd have to press down and then release the button press, and that would trigger it. So I'm going to stick with release for now, but just so you know, those options are available. So how do we know if a button has been pressed? Well, in Godot, there are things called signals. So if you go to this node tab up here and click signals, this has all of the signals that this button has. And if you can see, there is button down, button up, and then there's pressed. So if we read this, it says emitted when the button is toggled or pressed. And this button down, if action mode is button pressed, button up otherwise. So this signal will tell us whether the button has been pressed. If we double click this, what this does is it connects the signal to a script. So if I hit connect here, we now have a new function that was created in our main scene script here called onPlayButtonPressed. And if you'll see in the node tab where I double clicked on that, there's this green highlighted thing. And if I click that, or I guess if I go somewhere else and then double click on it, it will take me straight to this function. So that means that this signal is now connected. So whenever this pressed thing happens, which is whenever the button is pressed, it will trigger this onPlayPressed function that was just created. So if I test this, I can do print button pressed and hit play. And now you'll see in the output, every time I press the button, it says button pressed. Voila! So that is basically how you use signals in Godot. Pretty much every kind of node has signals. So even like this label, you'll see it has focus entered, mouse entered is a common one, resized. So you can check this node tab for any type of node and see what kind of signals it has. And you can also write custom signals if you write your own script and emit them for certain actions. So, but this is a pretty common one with the button. You can also connect signals in code. I won't go through that right now, but if you don't want to go through the connecting signals here, there's a way to do that through scripts as well. So yeah, we have our button signal, and we'll go back to our design document. We now need to create a new scene for the game. So we're going to have a main menu scene and the game scene. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to go through it a little quicker now that we've kind of done this first scene. And actually, I might just copy this and do new 2D scene here. Paste. I did it as a scene. That's not what I wanted. Copy the control then. Paste. There we go. Call this game. Save that. There we go. So I basically just copied our existing scene over, so it's a little easier to get started. And I'm gonna just quickly try to make it so we can go back to the main menu. And I'm just gonna rename the main one to Pong. And in the game, I'm gonna call this game. And call this menu btn. So now if we want to be able to go back to the main menu from our game scene, we need a new script for our game. So I'll create one here, game.gd. And I also need to reconnect this signal. So right now this button that I copied is still connected to the signal in the main script, but we want it to connect to the game script. So I'm going to do disconnect all. And then I'm just going to double click it again, and it'll create a new function in the new script that I just created. So now I believe if you want to change scenes, you do change scene. I guess we can do a packed scene. This might take a second to explain, so I will just do this real quick, and then I believe I have to do, I forget if I have to instantiate it or not. I will check that in a second. Game get tree dot change scene. Let's just see if that works first, and then kind of explain that. I'll work the first one. I didn't do that yet. I think I have to load this. Didn't work. Var. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So what just happened? So we had our game script, and we want the buttons to change which scene is like the main scene. So if we're in the main menu, we want to click the button, and then we want to go to this new game scene that we just created. So we already had the button pressed working. So we just added this new function. Get tree is real common. You'll see that a lot. That kind of just gets the root node. I'll try to explain that really quick, but basically you run the game, and if you go to the remote tab over here, you see there's remote and local. Local is the stuff that you're actually editing like in the editor when you're making the game, adding buttons, labels, that kind of stuff. And then remote is the actual game that is running over here. So you'll see there's this root. That is what happens when you do get tree. It gets this root node. So anytime you're running a game, it actually starts with root, and then it adds whatever scene you have on top of that. So you can see it added the main scene under root, and then it added all this stuff. Real quick, I'm going to just change my settings so that this is easier to show you. Under display window, there's this always on top, which makes the game window always on top, as it says. So if I rerun this and then click stuff, it will stay, so you can still see it. So anyway, what I wanted to show was that the remote is the running game window, so I can actually change stuff in the remote. So I can change this background color, and it will change in the running game. But it doesn't actually save. So if I close this and then rerun it, it will go back to the default. So that's a really useful tip for debugging. You can change properties or look at properties of things in the currently running game, and you can also change them around. Okay. Uh, so yeah, when we get tree, we get the root node, and then change scene to packed is just the function that basically has that root node and then swaps out that main scene with the game scene. And how I got this reference here is if you have a scene in your file system, if I click on that and then I do control and then click and then control and drag it over here, it creates a new variable that references that file. So again, it's just click on it and then control and then drag it in, and it creates that that variable for you. And all this is doing is loading the file. So this is just the path to that file, which is the game scene. And I'm just calling that variable, or I guess const in this case, game. So now it has a reference to that scene in my file system, and it just changes it to that. And then I did the same over here. I forget why, but the main scene, you might not be able to do it as a preload. You might have to do it as a load. So when I drag this in, I just have to change this to var instead of const, and then load, and it should work. So a slightly different setup there, but same concept. Just reference the scene file, called it main, and then get tree.change scene. Yeah, so we'll you can just check that that's working. So we go to game, we go back. Now we have two different scenes that we can use. So we did that. We added the play button. And next up, we're going to create an arena. I think we're going to end this with a paddle. So for this video, we will add, basically just going to add the divider in the center, and then I'm going to add a paddle, at least one paddle that you can move. And we'll kind of call that for this video, and then the next video we can add the ball. Yeah, so we have our main menu, we have our game menu. Now we just got to start adding stuff. So I'm just gonna move this to the bottom. So if you want to go back to the main menu, you can. And we'll make this like, I don't know, 16 font. Just make it kind of small. We don't really need this game label anymore. We can get rid of that. I'm going to add a, let's see, I guess for now I'll just add a color rect to the center. Call this center. That works pretty well. So all I did there was I added a color rect, and then I used the anchor control to put it in the center of the screen. And then I'm gonna change the width from here. Sorry, I moved my camera down a little bit so you can see. So when you do the center, it makes the width 0. So I'm just gonna increase that to like 16 or something. And then I'm gonna offset that. Doesn't work. Maybe yeah, I forget how to change the anchor of this. Let me see if I can do that. There we go. See if that works. No, it doesn't work. Okay, I thought that would work, but I haven't done this in a while. Alright. Well, I'll mess with it later, so it doesn't have to be exactly in the middle, but yeah, so that's going to be our center. And now we have a little line there. So now let's go ahead and add the paddle. Guess I'm probably going to do like a character controller, something like that. Let's go ahead and do that. Search character, character body 2D. This is a pretty basic object that you'll use for a lot of your game characters. So I'm just going to call this player. And this is going to be our like paddle that kind of moves around. And you'll see there's like a warning here. This just means that there's a type of node that you have to add as a child for this node to actually work. So you'll see says it has no shape. Consider adding collision shape 2D. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add a collision shape 2D. And now this one has a warning. It says it needs a shape resource. And the shape resource is just over here where it says shape. Go ahead and create a rectangle shape 2D. And now the warnings should go away. We're going to make this, let's say, I don't know, 128. 20 seems good for the width. And I'm going to just add a color. Actually, maybe I'll do a sprite just to show you sprite 2D. So I've searched sprite, create. This icon.svg. This is really useful for just getting quick prototypes in. So if you click this and drag it into the texture, that will add that image as the sprite. And I kind of wanted it to be the size. Not sure if I can make this. That's close enough. Yeah. So you can kind of drag that into the shape that you want, and now I can move the player. So one thing I want to mention, you'll see now we have several nodes on top of each other. We have the collision shape, we have the sprite, and we have the base node, which is the player. Generally, you want to move the root of the node, so I wouldn't want to move the sprite or the collision shape. I would want to keep those where they are and just move the player node. So one thing you can do is you can hit lock, which prevents that node from being moved. The only problem is there you'd have to select all of the child nodes. So I could prevent the sprite from being moved, and then this one. And now if I click over here, it would select that. The other thing you can do is just click the node you want to move in the scene tree. And then if you hold Alt, these arrows will pop up. And now you can click and drag with the mouse. So again, that's click the root node that you want to move, hold Alt, and then click and drag. And that will just move the entire thing for you. And if you're not sure how I'm moving around in here, I don't know if I explained that, but if you press middle mouse button and then click and drag, that drags the scene view, and then just a scroll wheel to scroll in and out. Yeah, so I'll go back here, press Alt, drag this to wherever I want it to be. And now we can hit run. And you can see our little player guy over here. So now we need to make this guy move. So I'm going to add a script, player.gd. And I guess we're going to do a probably a physics process. I mean, it could be a process function, but I guess we'll just do some basic input. So I'm going to type some stuff out, and then I'll kind of explain what it means here in a second. First, I'm going to do the, I think it's get axis. Yeah, and then we need to add some controls here. So I'm going to add some more input mapping here. I'm just going to call this up. I'm going to do W for up, and for down, I'm going to do S. And I think I have to put that here. So up and down. And I'm going to do print dir. There we go. Alrighty. So what just happened? So this physics process function is similar to that process one I talked about before that we commented out. It's a function that runs pretty much every frame of your game. So it's always going to be running. And here I'm basically just checking the input that we just created up and down. And get axis just takes two inputs and creates opposing values for them. So in this case, up, I believe, is -1, and down is 1. So if I run this, if I hit W, which is up, it will print out -1, and then it'll go back to 0, and then S will be 1. And we'll see why we did this in a second. So how do we make this thing actually move, right? Well, luckily the character body 2D has a built-in function called move and slide, which basically moves the object for us depending on its velocity. And we can set its velocity through code. So I'm going to say velocity dot y equals dir times speed. I'm going to define this speed variable up here and just call it 100. And now you can see it's moving. So if I hold W, it goes up, and S, it goes down. And you might be wondering, if W is up, why is it -1? Because you'd think up would be positive, right? But actually, in Godot, up is negative. So if you drew an axis on here, you'll see the way these arrows are pointing. It's pointing to the right and it's pointing down. And those are the positive directions in Godot. So for example, if I move my player back to the origin, which is 0, 0, transform position 0, 0, if I hold Alt and start dragging down, you'll see that the Y value is actually increasing. So Y going down is positive in Godot, and you'll see that as well with the red and green arrows. The green arrows pointing down, which means positive is down. And for X, positive is to the right. Just something to note for game development. It's pretty common, but it's worth pointing out. So I'll run this again and go up and down. And it's a little slow, so I'm going to increase the speed. And one thing you can do is I'm going to show you something called export. So if I do @export var speed, this creates a property in the inspector called speed. So I can actually change this, and I believe it will let me change it on the fly as well. So right now it's 100. Gonna make it more like 200, and now you can see he's a lot faster. Do 400. Now he's really fast. So exported variables are ones that you can change in the inspector, and you can also kind of change them easily, like on the fly. So really convenient. I'm going to leave it at like 400 for now. It seems good. Yeah, so what else do we need to add here? You'll see right now I'm getting a warning. This is just a convention of, it tells you if you have a variable that you're not using, in this case delta. I don't really have to go into delta, but delta is basically just the time that's passed since the previous frame. We're not using it, so I'm just going to call it underscore delta so that the warning goes away. So what else do we need to add here? Well, right now we can go off screen, so that's probably not good. So might want to get rid of that. So that's basically the two walls here that we probably need to make. So I will add the walls, and then that'll probably be it for this tutorial. This should be relatively simple. It's going to be called a static body 2D. So if you search static, this is a 2D physics object that will not move. And again, just like the player, we need to add our collision shape 2D. So go ahead and do that. And we need to add a shape. So I'll do another rectangle. And for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and make some random shape here. And then I'll just call this top wall. Duplicate that. Bottom wall. And I guess I'll just move this transform down. So I will kind of just drag this, make this towards the bottom. And I kind of want him to go close to the edge, but not all the way. So we'll just pick a random number for now. And one thing that's helpful is by default, you won't be able to see these blue rectangles. So if I hit play, you don't see anything there. You can go to debug, visible collision shapes. Go ahead and turn that on. And now if I hit play, you can see where those collision shapes are. And you can see that I am indeed colliding with those. I can no longer go off screen, which is great. Now in the actual game, you probably wouldn't want to see those, but one thing you can do is kind of have this open, and then you can kind of try to make these the correct size here. So I can try to make this line up with the border a little bit, and now you'll see it kind of goes off screen. So just helps to line up your collision shape if you want to do it that way. I'll probably not do it that way because I want to actually make this line up properly. So I'll just move it down there, and I'll move this one up. However you want to do it. I'm not too worried about getting it exact for this, but yeah, now you can see I can't go past the edge. And I'll turn that back off. One thing you can do if you don't want to keep having to like click play every time and you just want to go straight to the game, you can actually hit this button here, F6, run current scene. So if I have the game scene open, it will run the game scene by itself. And you can just go straight into that. And you can still go back to main if you want. And if I have the main scene open and hit F6 or run current scene, it will run that one. So whichever one you have open here, it will run that. So just a handy tip. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Again, I'll just show you how to export this real quick. We already created these, so all you have to do is hit export all, hit debug, and it will export it again for you. And if you just go back to that folder, exports game.exe, you'll see our new game is exported, and we can move around, go back to main, and that's pretty much it. If you want to test the web build, again, just go here, remote deploy, run in browser, and you can test that out, make sure it works. Sometimes you'll get errors depending on your, what you're exporting it to. For web, you can go to the three dots, go to more tools and developer tools, and it will show you all of the output. So if you get errors here, you can try to debug those and see what kind of problems there are with your export. And there are guides on the docs for exporting. So if you search exporting for web or compiling for web, let's see, that's not it. There it is, exporting for web. This gives you a bunch of information about what you need to do to make your game work, depending on if you want it to run on like itch.io, for example. This tells you certain things like audio effects are not supported, things like that. So worth a read through if you want to make a web game. But anyway, that's going to be it for this tutorial. In the next one, we will probably look at creating another paddle and then creating the ball that we can play around with. But yeah, we got a menu and a guy that moves and can't go off screen. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.